then it's easier to go beyond the mind. If we go beyond this identification with this body-mind, there's a lot of harmony, balance, and peace. And when there's a peaceful space, then, of course, organically, there's a certain rest, a deep rest, which brings restoration, regeneration. And as they say in Ayurveda, even rejuvenation. I mentioned in the beginning of the story that these darkroom retreats in Ayurveda, the ancient Indian healing modality, these darkroom retreats are called Kaya Kalpa, ageless body, timeless body, and are famous for rejuvenation. I mentioned that we can see that the ancient yogis were the biohackers of the good old days. And I just wanted to tell you an exemplifying story to showcase that. In the anecdote of my biographical experience, to make that relatable. And indeed, when I came out from this 10-day retreat, I felt very restored on all levels: physical, energetic, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. All 5 layers, the famous Pancha Kosha, 5 Pancha Kosha body, 5 layers, 5 aspects of our being restored, centered, aligned. And it's quite a marvelous experience actually to come out of a darkroom retreat. Preferably one exits around sunset time, very slowly. The longer the retreat was, the better it is to have a very slow transition. To integrate this transformation which happened in this womb, it's, as mentioned, like a hibernation, and we come out a different being on the other end. It's a truly profound, transformative experience. A heart opening and frequently life-changing transformation. So coming out in the sunset time, maybe even to be on the safe side with some sunglasses, some shades to not overwhelm the eyes, over flooding with too much brightness. And then especially in the golden hour of the sunset light, the beauty, the majestic perfection of nature is very apparent. It's very much obvious because haven't seen anything in days and weeks. Just blown away in awe of the mind-boggling, overwhelming beauty, the colors, the magnificence of Mother Nature. And other human beings. I remember my friends picked me up, my partner picked me up. It was like a firework, almost like a psychedelic experience. In my early days, late teenage and 20s times, I was a lot onto psychedelic substances and going strong into these adventures, into the wonderlands of consciousness, substance-induced. And in many ways, what I recreated in my 30s on these tropical islands and in these monasteries and ashrams in Asia is the freedom of entering into altered states of consciousness without biochemical substances and still having these amazingly profound experiences. Going deeper and deeper, beyond the limitations of our ordinary thinking. Not only thinking outside of the box, but in a way living outside of the box. And at the same time, integrating this ancient wisdom into the modern life context. So it was not just hiding on a lonely mountain. I did that also. Another day I'll tell you more stories about a 49-day jungle retreat, sitting alone for 7 weeks on a rock, So, in some ways, hiding a bit from the modern, overwhelming intensity of technology and all the rest of it. I remember, for example, it was 2008, one of those years when I was living there on the small island, and I remember one of the resort owners was telling me, "Boka, the economy is down, down." I was like, what is he talking about? And I didn't really understand what he's referring to. Only afterwards, in hindsight, I understood 2008 was the economical crisis, the crash of the stock markets, Wall Street, whatever. I didn't even know about it. He had less tourists coming to his resort, so he was aware of it. But we were living this kind of independent hippie life on this wonderful island. So yes, it was hiding a bit, yet we were not completely protected from modern surroundings. Of course, we were using technology and were exposed also to the intensity of projects, manifesting things, the website of the yoga school, and online marketing and projects, and no, all the demanding aspects of modern life. So we were not just completely isolated in this middle of nowhere nature setting. So it was in a way the contrast between also these monthly 10-day silent meditation retreats and then having to catch up with life in the other 20 days of the month and organizing, like I said, project management, online marketing, coordination, team meetings, this, that, things going wrong, conflicts between people with different opinions, all the rest of it. And yes, I could apply there also what I learned in my 20s, where I studied psychology and psychotherapy in Germany. I could apply these coaching practices which I developed in my 20s, this modern understanding and innovative strategies, which I summarized in a master's thesis, this full university research and the full-fledged thing of the Western context. I could apply it also in these spiritual surroundings of the alternative tropical island life and learned how to bring together the best of the cutting edge modern strategies, life coaching approaches, combining that with the living tradition of yoga, not just with the dusty, conservative, dogmatic, old fashioned scripture tradition, but with the living tradition, the ongoing yoga research as we were cultivating it. And in this context, I brought together those two worlds. And I was working, for example, as a relationship coach. People were experimenting with open relationships. And then they were, of course, getting into a lot of emotional trouble. And then I tried to advise, counsel, and coach them, mediate between the partners, using the best of the good old days, the ancient wisdom tradition, all the detachment, the surrender, the neutral attitudes coming from the contemplative meditation practices, using the ancient technology and combining it with the modern psychology, psychotherapy, life coaching approaches, and making it useful, applicable, for example, in the context of these couple relationships being challenged. So many lessons were learned over those years and decades. And there's a lot of deeper understanding which one can find in such dedicated research. And there are many valuable lessons which were learned in these times. Not only studying so many of the ancient scriptures and of the modern cutting edge research in the field, but also sitting with living legends, with masters, spiritual teachers, and wise beings, sages in Asia, absorbing all their wisdom and trying to integrate it, absorb it, and make sense of it in my own life. and share it in this vibrant community, teaching on an ongoing basis, coaching, guiding other people. So this transformative journey was having a strong impact on my life. Years and years of this dedicated practice, of these transformative surroundings where everybody was growing, evolving, upgrading, people having energetic openings, chakra blossomings, and full intensity of Kundalini awakening, and many friends going so strong in their practice. Some of the friends were like practicing up to 8-10 hours of yoga and meditation per day, 7 days per week. But kind of the baseline in the community was kind of like 3-4 hours per day. You should at least practice. Every morning you stay at home and practice there. So very transformative, very strong intensity. And the equation is simple. Do the practice and get the results. If you put in the effort, you will receive the fruits, the outcome. And the equation is simple. You put in a lot of practice, you get a lot of results. And you put in huge amounts of dedicated practice, you get huge amounts of benefits. Simple as that. It's not as linear and as simple as that, but you understand the principle. So life circumstances don't only always allow for this intensified practice. And then wherever we are at, whatever we can do is fine. And there's a famous saying in spiritual traditions of Asia, no effort is ever wasted. Even a little practice with pure intention, with a dedicated heart, with the sincerity of our intention, even a little practice can take us a long way. It's not about the quantity. So don't get turned off. Don't worry if you say, like, yeah, but I only have 23 minutes per day. No, to be honest, I only have 7. But no, I want to make at least half an hour. And it's like, you're fine. Wherever you are at, you might be a mother. And you do many hours of karma yoga every day. And in this selfless service, you might learn a lot more about this detached, surrendered, selfless service for your child than I learned in these years in retreat centers. Because the question is, how much do we actually become more humble? How do we actually overcome the arrogance and pride of the ego? How can we really detach? And we're talking here not about letting go of this and that a little bit, but about an existential detachment known as surrender, which you and your family surroundings might learn more when getting up at 3:49 a.m. to care for the baby, or some other life circumstances where you are confronted with the need for selfless service. There can be deeper lessons learned about detachment and surrender in that real life scenario than I could have learned them hiding on a tropical island in kind of idealized surroundings, seemingly supportive. So it's not an either or. Any path which is dedicated, which has this sincerity, any endeavor and aspiration which is cultivated from this purity of our intention, when we sincerely aspire to live with an open heart, and we really also take active steps in this direction, and we really allow ourselves, when it's time, to cultivate this serenity of detachment and surrender, any dedicated practice can bring us closer to the source, to the essence, to the supreme being of the universe. So, wherever we're at in this journey, we can benefit from our modern inspirations and innovative strategies, lifestyle trends, technologies such as the mentioned wearables, biohacking, biofeedback devices, and so on. We can benefit from the best of the modern, latest cutting edge technology and tips and tricks and life hacks. We can benefit from those, and we can benefit from the timeless ancient wisdom because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. As mentioned initially, sages, yogis, seers, philosophers, wise grandfathers have been there and done that. And they discovered the deeper essence. And they found out in hard learned lessons, in hard earned attempts, and many failed attempts, where the shortcuts are and where we are getting lost in dead ends and detours, wasting our time and effort. So the invitation is to learn from this ancient wisdom so that we don't need to start from scratch. Acknowledging that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. These sages, these masters, yogis and seers, who've walked the path before us, who've been going so strong in their dedicated practice, who've given their heart, who've given their blood, who've opened their heart on all levels to go above and beyond, who dedicated their entire lives. It can be very valuable for us to receive these pearls of wisdom. And then we, of course, need to reinterpret them and make them useful, meaningful, and practically applicable for our modern life circumstances. So, this is the invitation of yogic life coaching. A holistic form of coaching, integrating the different areas and aspects of our entire being, and in a way accelerating, supercharging, or at least inspiring our modern Western perspective on our life with the ancient wisdom traditions, with the technologies of the classical yoga, with the authentic, time-proven modalities as they come from Ayurveda, the sister science of yoga, dedicated to the healing. Same as the yoga therapy has decades and centuries of experience of healing not only some small stiff neck, shoulder, but tackling also bigger chronic diseases. Metabolic imbalances such as diabetes can be tackled with yoga therapy and Ayurveda. And this is done in India in yoga hospitals. One of the famous research places is the Lonavala Institute, where we find more than a century of research in that field. So, in other episodes, I will share more of these healing modalities, how they can help to benefit our body, our energies, our emotions and mind, and how we can also go beyond body and mind into the existential bliss of spiritual awakening.